On the cutting edge of anomaly research, you are about to experience The Evidence with your host, 3D pioneer and image analyst with Mars X3D, E.W. Gannett.
Greetings to all you splendid weirdos. You know who you are. If you're new to the channel, this is an X3D channel, and that means you have to be a little bit weird. You have to go click on the links down below and learn how to view X3D, which opens a magic window, so to speak, on your computer. In fact, the bigger your computer screen, the more detail and the more window, the more depth you're going to get. So I do encourage you to have a look at it. This is your buddy Dave over Mars X3D. And summer is upon us, and we're swimming in all kinds of heat, and but enjoying the fact that we can actually get outside the house and not suffer frostbite. So that's really kind of nice. I'm going to show you something right off the bat. Our very first anomaly coming up that is probably fake, but I feel like I should show it to you anyway. Just so you can say that you saw it, I presented it, but take it with, like I say, a handful of salt, because you just don't know. I almost inevitably, 99.8% of the time, have provenance or citation for every single image I present. There's a shortened URL in the data bar, and of course a clickable link in the video description below. So you can go and look at these things on a flat screen, and you can see whether I've falsified the information or not, and as well as look for other anomalies if you're so inclined. But every now and then there's something that doesn't have a citation, or that I'm unable to get a citation for, which I usually toss, but this one is kind of cool, even if it's fake. Anyway, that's enough talking. Let's have a look at it, see what you think. Let me know down below. We're going to start out with something that I advise taking a handful of salt as you look at it. This was posted by someone named Jorge Urrutia, and it's supposed to be a series of images taken by an amateur astronomer of the moon, and it's supposed to show a gigantic disk traveling across the surface of the moon. I took the clearest one of these and rendered it in X3D for you to look at. Now, I did ask Jorge for a citation link, and he wasn't forthcoming. And I did put a call out to some of my colleagues, and no one seems to be able to identify it. So this may be just Photoshop trickery and not even worth looking at. But it's interesting, and if it's true, well, a disk maybe 100 miles wide flying across the surface of the moon, that could be pretty good evidence, if it isn't fake. This is an intriguing find by my buddy Laszlo Shabalix from an old Oppie Pancam. There aren't any new ones, but I guess you knew that. 977 was a sol, and these anomalies stretch all along the length of the arrow. They're things that really shouldn't be there. Most of you who've been with me a while will see the non-fractal shapes right away. But I'm going to go ahead and point out a couple of them just to keep things simple. This one looks like it came straight out of a Play-Doh factory. I mean, the edges are super clean, and we have that even width along the length of it, and of course that nice arch as well. But look at the end closest to us, partially hidden behind the rock. Looks kind of like a fan duct opening to me, with the round circumference and those openings and that piece right down the middle. This one looks about as manufactured as they can get. Is this also ducting, or is it something shaped by a stonemason? And look carefully at the left end, along the top. You'll see 3 perfect squares embossed or carved into the surface, all the same size and equidistant apart. The shape and sinuous curve of this piece suggests it might be broken off of the piece to the left. I'm sure you're also noticing the rectangular slabs lying on the ground. And what about this thing way in the back? That's a nice square opening there, and it even has a lip around it. And these two guys kind of jump out of the background. More ducting? That one in back sure has a look, doesn't it? Down to the right a couple of feet is this interesting bit of stone in the background. Let's move in on it. I count at least a dozen right angles on this, whatever it is. I don't see how erosion or breakage could result in such symmetry and evenness. The impression I get from this whole collection of artifacts is that they're ruins of an ancient building, one that very possibly had central heat and air. Curiosity 2635 is another amazing G-pan by Neville Thompson, and it's one we covered pretty thoroughly last year. But one of our new team members, Ola Clarkvist, I hope I pronounced that right, ran across something that we all missed, which is why we need as many eyes as we can get on these images. Ola's find is inside the green target. But before we zoom in on it, I want to point out these three items that we covered in one of last year's episodes. Starting with the arrow on the bottom, we have a pile of what looks like rebar all gathered together in one place. The next arrow up points at a bizarre opening in an egg-shaped rock. And then the arrow above that points at something I think is really interesting. Let's revisit that one for just a second. This, to me, looks like a badly weathered and corroded housing for electronic equipment. There's all kinds of stuff inside it, and, I like that little piece sticking out of the circular opening on the right, the one at about the 8 o'clock position. When you relax your eyes into it, you can see that it has a fitting on the end that could be for gas, electricity, or even hydraulics. Kind of impossible to tell. Anyway, let's get back to what Ola found. Isn't it strange how this little Eiffel Tower looking piece is on a flat shelf and partially protected by the boulder overhang? Is this a tiny antenna? A miniature Martian oil derrick? Or maybe just some kids playing around? Kind of like we stack rocks along the seashore. Who knows? But thanks to Ola Clarkvist for his sharp eyes and for taking the time to bring it to my attention. Neville Thompson's G-pan of 1301 through 1302 has been gone over pretty thoroughly by anomalists all over the world. You can see the famous city on top of the hill on the upper left, all those white structures with pyramids, domes, and square buildings. If you haven't already checked these out, click the link below and have some fun poking around in the ruins. I wanted to focus on the not so obvious though, and you gotta admit, that big square off in the distance does look like it needs to be examined. There's a lot going on in this area, and yes, it's blurry because of the extreme distance, but it's not so blurry we can't do a quick inventory. First up is the curious canyon itself. Take a look at the geology in this area. Then, please explain to me how these rigidly perfect right-angled walls were formed? And look at the bottom right corner. See the lighter wall turning at a 90-degree angle? Are these the foundations of a gigantic building? Or maybe a mining operation conveniently close to the city on the hill? Did you notice this perfect square under the sand? It could be stated that all those dark holes we see everywhere could be windows or maybe ventilation shafts, or maybe just natural holes in the cliff face. There's just not enough detail to say for certain. But finding a perfect square under the sand, that's a little bit suspicious in my book. And what about this rounded honeycomb structure just about dead center? There seems to be tantalizing details just beyond the focus of the camera. But we're going to leave pareidolia in the back seat and keep moving. This line of dark spots, we might be tempted to call them windows maybe, but take a careful look at the way the light hits them. These are bumps or hemispheres, and that makes me think this entire area is nothing but shattered ruins of a once great city. Of course, that's just speculation on my part, but how else do you explain what we're seeing here? A cynic would say it's all just rock and sand and erosion, no big deal. And I'd say you better stick to being a barista instead of that career in archaeology you were thinking about. The shading is a little hard to see on this one, but it's directly under the word GPAN in the data bar. Those look like radial openings on the front of the huge kind of Quonset hut structure extending behind it. Obviously, there's a lot more to see in this one image, but let's keep moving because there are still some amazing things to see in this gigapan. This is basically the same view as the last one, just a little bit to the left. You can't really see the city on the hill, but there's a whole lot more inside the green target area. Take a minute to let your eyes wander around this scene because it's full of amazing structures. Those of you who are now adept at X3D already understand that you can look around inside an image just like you do in real life, focusing on one thing after another. What we're going to do is zoom in on what I think are some pretty interesting formations. Let me warn you in advance that these images will be blurry. What you're looking at currently is already zoomed almost to the max. It is quite a distance from the rover. But you'll still be able to see basic shapes. Shapes that, according to geology and according to NASA, just shouldn't be there. Here we go. In front and in back, we have what might possibly be toppled obelisks or maybe just building walls. What I like is that octopus-looking thing in the center with a large rounded dome and those four tentacles spreading across the front of whatever this is. You know, Mars was a water planet like Earth. So is it just possible this might actually be a depiction of an octopus? I know. Irresponsible speculation on my part. But regardless what it might be, it certainly isn't natural. This wall, if that's what it is, appears to be highly decorated with ornate carving. I probably would have skipped over this one if it weren't for that hook coming off the top left. That looks really purposeful to me. We moved just a bit to the left. You can still see the hook on the right. This looks like a step pyramid to me, with collapsed structures all around it. Directly in front of it is a large round object with a smaller dome on top. Did this sit atop the pyramid at one time? And while we're here, just look around in the background. Way too blurry to say anything for certain, but still, those shapes are really reminiscent of buildings, aren't they? Is this a building? A craft? It's an alien world, so we actually have no idea what these shapes represent, except to say they're probably not at all what we imagine them to be. The way this is oriented, it almost looks like a stage or an amphitheater to my eyes, but it could be a building toppled on its side and half buried in the sand. And this last one, I'm not even going to speculate, except to declare that it's absolutely not a natural feature. This is one area where I wish Percy's Ingenuity drone could do a flyover and do some LiDAR mapping of this entire community. As it stands now, though, we're decades away from real answers to this and 1,000 other questions about Mars. Well, that's a wrap for this episode, and I sure appreciate you stopping by. You know, if you saw something you liked, please consider giving this video a thumbs up. It lets me know whether to continue or not. And while you're at it, hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell. To all my friends and unique weirdos out there, you know who you are. Stay safe and stay weird. Until then, this is your buddy Dave over at Mars X3D. Be well.